Hey everybody, welcome back to a full day of coverage from the Free Assange Vigil. My name is Steve Boykin. I am joined by Andrew Sigmund and Kendra Kristen. We are going to be doing this throughout the day. Kendra is down in Phoenix, Arizona at the Code Pink-led protest for no war on Iran. Kendra, if you could kind of give us the lay of the land there and then introduce the person that you would like to interview real quick.
Yeah, definitely. So we're here in Arizona at Camelback and 24th. Here, let me turn the camera around. There's a pretty good crowd here. And I have here Evelyn, and she with Code Pink, and she organized the protest. So I'm going to hand her my earphones so everybody can hear her, and then you guys are free to ask her any questions, etc.
Thank you so much.
Hello?
Hello, my name's Steve Boykin, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Free Assange Vigil series, and Kendra said your name, but I did not get it.
It's like Edwin with the A on the end, Edwina. Edwina.
Edwina, how are you today?
I'm great. We've got some people here who say no war in Iraq and no war in Iran and bring the troops home. So, you know, that's great.
And how familiar are you with the history of U.S. destabilization policy in Iran, in regard to Iran?
Actually, I've been active since 2004 against the war in Iraq, and certainly have followed the last years with economic sanctions against Iran and other belligerent actions, including the illegal act of war where they assassinated Soleimani. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not a historian, but certainly I'm very familiar that our policies are failing.
And how long have you been with Code Pink? Since the same time, early 2000s?
Indeed, yes, absolutely. In fact, I've been to DC many times to protest there, also to see my congressional people and talk about why they shouldn't be supporting wars and a war like Essex. Yes.
That is excellent, Edwina. We found out like the second week of November that Iran had discovered an additional 53 billion barrels of oil that they announced, and within less than 2 months, we have manufactured a reason to assassinate their basically like rock star caliber in terms of popularity general. And it looks like this could be a touch off to a very massive war with a ridiculous amount of casualties. So I want to commend you and Code Pink for the work that you guys do, that you've done over the years. Is there what do you see moving forward in the next couple of months? Is this just Trump trying to get reelected, or do we have a real chance of taking this to a level of escalation that involves boots on the ground and blood spill?
Well, there's many answers to that in terms of my interpretation. We're at a trigger situation because, first of all, I doubt that Iran is directly going to attack the troops. I could be wrong, but I think what's going to happen, it's going to happen through a proxy situation. And then, of course, what does our president do? React the same way? And so at some point, there could be just a hair trigger response, and then all of a sudden, we're in a full-fledged war. It's clear that, and that's something we've talked about, that many people have talked about, that why are we in the Middle East? Because we're still dependent on fossil fuels. And so blood for oil, and why are we sending all of our young people to die in these wars? A lot of them people who can't get to school or come from situations where they believe that they're doing something for their country, and they're being lied to and they're being misused, and in some cases giving their life for a cause that is not worthy. And that was something that Cindy Sheehan asked President Bush, for what noble cause did my son die? And of course, she never got an answer. None of us ever got an answer. So we will just continue and keep watch. And we can't depend on our politicians. We have to keep pushing from the grassroots and say, look, it's enough. We've spent trillions of dollars. We've spent a lot of American blood. We've killed so many Iraqis and other people. What's the point here? We want our money back. We want our lives back, and we want peace.
Absolutely. And I really commend people like you being out in the streets right now, actually protesting to end the war in Iran before it even starts. I don't know if you'd seen or heard anything about it, but have you had a chance to look into the OPCW leaks that have recently came out about all the stuff that was going on around the Syrian false flags and the gas attacks?
No, I have not. No, I haven't. I haven't. No, no.
Okay.
So I guess
Well,
my concern is that we're trying to say there's a policy that needs to be very clear that we should not be in the Middle East. Our troops should come home, and that we should try and negotiate, get people back to peaceful negotiations, and establish ourselves as world leaders instead of world provocateurs.
and I think that's the best way to sum it up, really, because we've just spent the last almost 100 years basically parading around the world, destroying country after country. What are some ways you think that people at home that aren't out at a protest necessarily, but still have a little bit of time today, what are some things you'd recommend for them to do in their communities to raise awareness about stopping the war in Iran?
Well, first of all, our politicians need to be held accountable. So I would say they should call their Congress people. I think they should call their senators. They should talk to their friends and say, hey, do you have time to do an email? Do you have time to do a call? I think they need to contact their local peace organizations and see how they can offer their skills, whether it's through art, whether it's through, doing signs, whatever it is. There's a lot of ways that people can contribute, and they can do that at home and or in the streets.
Cool. So what are some of the big successes that you and Code Pink have had in the last 3 or 4 years as the wars have really kind of escalated?
Well, I think one of the things is that Code Pink CC has been ever present in the Congress, actually speaking out during the hearings, getting arrested. In other words, not letting the politicians, not letting the Congress get off. I think that's a big deal. I think one of the things that we can say, although obviously Syria is a disaster, is that we stopped us from going to full-fledged war under Obama, because he was thinking about maybe we should do something in Syria. And I think Code Pink was one of the major players in saying, no, we can't do this, and then we're not going to do it. And I think it really had an impact. But I think what it is, it's constant presence, constant lobbying, constantly saying no. And you just got to put it out there and keep the American people informed and let them make a decision.
You are absolutely right. We won't keep you too long, so just let us know when you need to step back and join the protest. You couldn't be more right when you say that we can't depend on our politicians for this. It is only going to be through grassroots action, and Code Pink has really been at the forefront of that over the last almost 2 decades, going back to the start of the Iraq War. We lost a lot of the energy behind protests when Obama got elected. The left kind of went to sleep. But Code Pink has always been one of those organizations that refuses to lay down, regardless of what the letter at the end of the name of the president is. So again, I really want to thank you for being organized and active in this.
Well, thank you, and hopefully we'll see a lot of more people in the streets. And hopefully, we're not going to go into a deeper war. I mean, this is a very troublesome time, and it's time for the people to stand up and say, no, we're not going to war. So thanks.
Thank you.
I'm going to try and get Jason Carney up on the chat now.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Guys talk on yourself.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. But Code Pink, just to give them a shout out, it was actually a Jimmy Dore video where I first really discovered Code Pink, and it was one of the ones where, well, I guess got inspired by Code Pink. It was one of the ones where Medea Benjamin was getting pulled off stage while nonstop saying the truth about the war in Iraq. And to me, it was, if this little frail, not elderly, but older woman can be putting her life and body and everything she has on the line to tell the truth about what's going on in our country, it's something that me as a young, decently healthy man can do too. So Code Pink, just as a whole, is such an inspiring organization, and I'm really grateful that they're out there today and that you're out there with them, Kendra.
Yeah, me too. It's a great turnout out here. Lots of good people, lots of good connections. The news was actually out here reporting, Channel 12 here in Arizona. So we'll see how much time they give to this protest. But yeah, I'm glad I could be here too. It was kind of impromptu, but it's perfect. And glad to put a free Assange sign out here as well, because, you know, there's still, even within the anti-war group, you know, a lot of people don't know what's going on with him. The media has really been successful with silencing his persecution. And I mean, we have to remember, he's the one who exposed all this 10 years ago. This is exactly what happens when there are no consequences for war criminals. You know,
Absolutely.
They're going to commit more.
So how did you actually discover that Code Pink was having a protest out today? Were you on like a mailing list for them, or did it just pop up on Twitter?
No, it just popped up. I saw Medea Benjamin's tweet that said we're doing nationwide protests 1-4. I'm like, that's tomorrow. And then I looked up online. I was like, Phoenix Code Pink. And then I found this. And I wasn't sure what to expect because there were like 8 people that RSVP'd. And I was like, well, that's great. And then I got here. And I mean, there's easily over 50 people here. You know, at one point, I think there was close to 70. So it's a good turnout.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Steve, you said you had some stuff going on in Santa Cruz later?
Yeah, I believe I'm gonna go to the San Jose protest because Jason Barney pointed out to me that it would likely be bigger with a larger media presence. So if I can incorporate what we're doing here at with this protest in a larger venue, I will absolutely do that. That starts at 3 o'clock today Pacific time, and I will make sure that I've got a camera on it and letting people know what the kind of reaction and presence is, and what the media presence looks like. If there is one, if it's thin on the ground, if people are actually turning out from networks to take a look at this, because really we're once again standing on the precipice of a war that is going to be just incredibly bloody. Again, like the scope of the size of the country Iran is out of people's minds. They don't get a feel for how big this country is, nor that it is almost entirely mountainous. And the amount of military personnel that it would take to secure, let alone hold, parts of Iran is just mind-boggling. So yeah, we need people on the ground. We need people out doing this, and we need to remind people at all times that without an organization like WikiLeaks to expose the background that leads up to these kinds of PNAC, Project for a New American Century fantasy. Without WikiLeaks, we go into all of this relatively blind. And I see that my good friend Jason Carney has popped in. Jason is the founder of People for the 99% on Facebook. He has been hosting our Free Assange Vigil live streams on that channel. He's a writer and a good commentator, and he's a good friend of mine. Jason, how you doing today, man?
Great. It's been a long time, man.
It's been a very long time. It's been a little bit too long. Jason, what was your first reaction when you found out that the U.S. assassinated Iran's top general by drone in Iraq?
My first impression was, why are people shocked? Ever since Trump got elected into office, he's had a very myopic foreign policy that's very basic. That's, you're a bad guy, I kill you, then you come to the bargaining table. No one should be shocked by this. Iran and Saudi Arabia have been in a long-term struggle for basically regional control of the Middle East, and Trump is in bed with Saudi Arabia. So I mean, all of it piled up. I'm just surprised that it happened right now. But then again, I thought about it for 30 seconds more, and I realized the impeachment situations popped up. So it's a wag the dog deal. None of this is shocking.
There's a clip going around social, like every possible social media site of Donald Trump from 2011, before the going into the 2012 election, saying that Barack Obama is a bad negotiator and he's going to get crushed in the election, and the only way he can get reelected is to take the weasel way out and like, there is an axiom that for everything that Trump says, there's a tweet, or a clip that shows him doing the exact opposite. And this is just another one of those situations. There's a theory among the Q crowd and the MAGA crowd that Trump is being forced into these kind of situations, which to me is absolutely ridiculous, particularly when you bear in mind that Trump has ordered no less than 4 coups while he's been president. He has upped the amount of drone strikes over that of which Obama did, which was an astronomical number. Trump is a militaristic president, authoritarian president, being authoritarian, and trying to remove your feelings from this MAGA crowd is advice you give the liberals all day, every day. You need to take your own advice on this.
My feeling is this: democracy is very volatile, and I'm not a huge fan of the liberal democracy that this country suffers from. And by liberal, I don't mean the political position. I just mean it, big L, liberal democracy. When you have enough dumb people get together, anything can happen. And the 2016 election was just proof of that. Trump's foreign policy is a very basic one. It doesn't have any long-term strategy. It doesn't have any accounting for how many soldiers are going to die, how many people on their side are going to die. It doesn't take into effect any basic level of foreign policy 101. I'm perplexed by the MAGA crowd and the Q crowd, which is, I mean, they're good for a laugh. But I'm looking at it, and why is anybody shocked by this? It's a perfect situation. He's facing domestic issues, and why not start a war with a bunch of poor people over there by using poor people here? I mean, it plays right into the Trump, forget the Republican and Democrat playbook.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We've got so much history between the U.S. and Israeli alliance and Iran. I'm going to go ahead and play this clip, which I hope we don't get. I hope we don't get a ding for, even though we're not monetizing the video.
Free use.
This is, of course, General Wesley Clark from back in 2005. If my screen will behave. What the hell?
I believe
what just happened? Here we go. Oh, right. Okay, here we go. General Wesley Clark.
I knew why, because I'd been through the Pentagon right after 9/11. About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, we've made the decision we're going to war with Iraq. This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, we're going to war with Iraq. Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. So I said, well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda? He said, no. He says, there's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. I said, is it classified? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, you remember that? He said, sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you.
And there we go. This is, I mean, again, this goes back to 2005. And I'm getting a note from Andrew that his phone is about to die, which means we're about to lose the stream. We will be back at a couple of different points throughout the day. And before it says Andrew's going to drop out, but we can still go on, so we can still talk with Kendra and Jason. Jason, you've seen that clip before. Iran is the last country on the list.
Yeah. My brother and I, around 2004, we're both military, both Army, and he worked in the intelligence component. And we would just have conversation between ourselves with the strategy being set up in the Middle East. And if you notice, we have bases in Uzbekistan, now Afghanistan. We have bases in Saudi Arabia. We literally encircled the country of Iran. And even back then, we were just strategizing, going, wow, this is exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to stack the deck and get everybody around Iran to be A, against them, and B, a forward operating base for us. And that was just by looking at the announced countries that they were talking about. So the general just verifies what those of us who paid attention within the military and foreign policy have known since that time frame. You can't even throw it at the neoconservative aspect, because we all know Trump's not neoconservative, he's proto-fascist. It's this war mentality, and it only benefits the rich at the hands of people like ourselves, the poor and the middle class, who have to go over there and fight these battles. Iran came to the table, negotiated, did what they were supposed to do to stop enriching uranium to, I think it was like 2.6 or 2.8%, whatever it was. And they were abiding by that policy. And now all of a sudden, you have a situation where the prompting is nonsense. American contractor died. That sucks. I feel horrible. That person didn't deserve to die. But how many people in response to that, including this Iranian general who essentially was running the armed forces of Iran, died? It doesn't make sense, other than this is tied to domestic problems at home, because this is way too radical of a response and a beating of a war drum that really at no point needed to be beat. It's bad enough we have things going on in Yemen. It's bad enough that we have things going across Iraq and the Middle East to begin with. To poke this hive, it seems more defensive by the Trump administration, and to divert attention from domestic issues at home, because it doesn't strategically make any sense.
Well, and that raises a different, an interesting point. And Kendra, I would like your opinion on this too, if you can hop in for it. this to me is proof that it doesn't matter who's in the White House. There is an agenda that existed before Trump got elected, before Obama got elected, even before George Bush got elected, that doesn't change no matter who is the proverbial face of the country. Let's pretend for a minute that election rigging doesn't happen. Let's pretend for a minute that gerrymandering doesn't exist, that interstate cross-check doesn't exist, and that in January of 2021, Bernie Sanders becomes president, and the need to manufacture confusion and consent for wars exists, and he is caught up in the middle of it. Given what we know about Bernie Sanders and the way that he reacts to pressure from the national security state, I know he's been very vocally against this, a war in Iran. What happens if he's president? Does he immediately shut down the 35 military bases surrounding the country? Does he withdraw troops? What do you think? Anyone can hop in on this.
Hey, sorry, it's a little chaotic here. I think also I have the video the wrong way. Well, one thing to that point, I wanted to show you guys a couple signs to your point about this just being a continued policy. Take a look at these ones. So, I mean, literally, you can just cross out one. Obama could have been added in there. All of these presidents, it's the same policy over and over again. And that's the other thing, too, is it's really, it's the same lies, over and over again. And people, I think that less and less people are buying them. Like some of the reactions to people who have been here protesting before, they've said that, now there are quite a few more honks than they had when they were out here in Iraq. So I do think that's a sign that people are waking up. But of course, you're never going to see that on the mainstream media. And I apologize, I didn't catch the last part of your question about Bernie, but yes, definitely. Obviously, it's just a continued policy, and you can see too the squeeze going down in every industry. People just getting poorer and poorer. So this is part of a bigger worldwide policy that we just we aren't a part of. The people are not considered in this at all, except for cannon fodder.
I was gonna say those exact cannon fodder. Ron Placone yesterday on live stream, he talked about the military in terms of the U.S.'s own God program, our longest standing, best running. Here's how you can get out of poverty, kid jobs for. There's a recent article that came out, I think one of the military online posts about the military recruiters are targeting poorer people. This is a traditional practice of the U.S. military, but what it amounts to is the poverty draft. We don't have an actual draft in this country. My son asked me if we were going to restart the draft this morning. And honestly, I don't think so, because the nationwide reaction to that is almost, very virulently anti-war. When we have a draft, people oppose it. When we have a voluntary military, there's less resistance to these forever wars. War in Afghanistan, old enough to join the army and go fight in Afghanistan. The war in Iraq, right around the corner. There are people who have joined the military in the last few years to serve alongside their fathers and their uncles who signed up back in 2003. We have got to organize nationally, not just under an anti-war banner, but on a freedom of information banner, under a freedom of the press banner. Are you able to talk to any of the people there in Phoenix about Julian Assange and about WikiLeaks while you're out there, Kendra?
Yeah, I have been. I've actually already gotten quite a few email addresses, made some good contacts. I actually made a contact with a guy out here who works for one of the local papers. I apologize, I forgot the name. It's like the Arizona something. That's not helpful. Anyhow, though, he gave me a contact out in Denver for one of his friends. So I'm hoping that they will cover our rally that we're going to have, 114. Quite a few people coming up saying, you know, we love your sign, the I Free Julian Assange sign, which was made from, you know, cardboard that I got at the coffee shop at the hotel I was staying at. So I wish it was a little bit bolder, but it's still working. So there are people here that I've talked to, you know, I mean, a lot of anti-war voices are at least a little bit familiar with that. And I plan to talk to more too. You know, I wish I had a microphone here. It'd be easier to then, you know, interview people rather than pass the earphones along. But, you know, one thing, just to go back to your point about the poor fighting these wars, is that, you know, I mean, what's happening here? These kids come out, they don't have much options. You know, they probably can't afford college. Maybe they didn't do, I mean, you know, there's just all of these things, and then you give them, oh, well, you can be a hero and you can have these benefits, and, you know, the military is a great place to be, and, you know, all of these things. And then the reality of it is that if you don't die, you know, when you come back, you have shit medical care. I mean, and I've heard before of people, you know, risking losing their benefits because of trying to get help for, you know, mental distress and things like that, you know, being discharged. And, you know, it's just, you know, we don't take care of these troops when they come home. You know, I mean, everybody stands up and claps at a baseball game, or, you know what I mean, whatever. And I don't know, it's really sad to see that here, and especially how I think that they really do. They target the young and the poor. You know, old men start talking, young men start dying.
That's an excellent way of putting it. Jason, this is a little bit more in your wheelhouse. When you started People of the 99%, it was originally veterans for the 99%, because you yourself are a veteran. I would like to know what your impression and comments are, what Kendra just ran down there.
I think it's fantastic. I think the problem is they need to be more vets that stand up and join alongside the anti-war component, because people in the military will look at the anti-war crowd that haven't served and go, it's really easy to talk from your lofty position, but we're the ones over here doing the fighting, and we're the ones who are caught in this mess because of socioeconomic, because of thoughts of heroism and things like that. We need more vets to step up and join alongside these groups. I did want to point out, it's hilarious where she's protesting. So if you notice, there's a Pottery Barn, a Sephora. This is the exact crowd that doesn't pay attention to these situations. They are part of the problem. That's the part of the neoliberal establishment there. It's hilarious. These are the same people who stand up during a baseball game, as Kendra brought up, and think that they're doing something for soldiers by wearing a yellow ribbon, whatever nonsense that they do, the half-assed measures, instead of fighting about the VA, instead of fighting about benefits, increasing the opportunities for soldiers to come back and receive proper mental health. 22 vets a day die from suicide, one of the highest rates when it comes to a profession. It's supporting your troops and saying something it's like thoughts and prayers after a shooting. It's about as useful as that. You wearing a yellow ribbon, you thanking me for my service, or anybody else, that means squat. Instead, call your Congress member, call your senator, be like, we A, don't need to be in another protracted conflict that has no end goal, and B, I support the troops, and I want to see action when it comes to the Veterans Administration, when it comes to healthcare for soldiers, when it comes to job opportunities for soldiers. It's nonsense, and I totally agree with her. But I also think it's up to vets to start stepping up and saying, "Hey, enough's enough. This has got to end now, and here's why." Because I think we offer a unique perspective that 98% of the population can't understand and relay.
While I've got you here, and we're gonna wrap up here in the next like 5 or so minutes, but while I've got you here, I wanted to kind of touch on the abject evil that is the military recruiter. I saw a post from the Navy the other day that was like, the paraphrased version of it is, talking. Are you actively talking about what's going on in Iran? Turn those Twitter fingers into trigger fingers. That's what the fucking tagline was. Turn your Twitter finger into a trigger finger. And that's how they're fucking trying to recruit people. Are you goddamn kidding me? I know that I've been lied to. I was lied to by military recruiters when I was in high school. I flat out told them, like, hey, look, at this moment right now, I'm on LSD. When you came to my house to talk to me, I am fucking high as dry pussy on some acid, and I am going to want to do that, at this time next year. I don't plan on joining the military for a lot of reasons, but that's one. Oh, don't worry, we're wasted and I mean, just flat the fuck out. The lies that I was told were incredible. And when I finally got around to, I don't want to shoot someone just because, they were like, oh, well, I guess we're going to leave it.
Well, that's the thing with recruiters. When you sign up and you're at basic training and you realize just how much shit you're in, there was an old joke about, don't thank me, thank your recruiter. So, I mean, recruiters aren't even beloved within the military. We look at them as worse than car salesmen. They will sell you a bill of goods that 90% of it doesn't follow through. My whole reason for signing up the military was so I could pay for college and try to have some upward mobility in my life. And all the other benefits and nonsense that they brought up, it took 2 years to get the bonus that was supposed to come out at a certain point. I had to fight for that. I had to fight for everything that they promised. It wasn't given to me. I had to fight either the VA, or I had to fight chain of command, or I had to raise hell. I had to get a congressman involved to get my bonus. And it's, at the end of the day, recruiters are scum. They know they're scum. They have no issue with it. And if they did, they wouldn't be doing it.
Fair fucking enough. We're gonna wrap up for the day. I would like for Kendra to please, let everybody know where we can find you on social media, and then Jason, you as well. I want to thank the both of you for popping in. Kendra, it's fucking awesome that you got to make it to a protest today and be there on the ground and participate in this with us. Jason, I hope to be talking to you more throughout the day. So yeah, let the good folks know where they can find you, please. You're still muted, Kendra.
Go ahead, Kendra.
Sorry. All right. Yeah, thank you so much. I wanted to actually show you guys this flag here, because I think it pretty much says everything perfectly. Hold on.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
I love it.
You know what I mean? Isn't that, that's it right there. So you can find me at DNV Free JA on Twitter. And then also we have an email, Denver Action, 2, Free JA at protonmail.com. We're going to be having a rally in Colorado outside the Capitol on January 14th. The Colorado legislative session is this month. So we're hoping to make some noise. And, everybody counts right now. It's really important, especially with all of this going on. If you're anti-war, you should be standing up for free information. You should be standing up for WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, because they expose these for exactly what it is. So thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate that you guys did this. It's awesome. So thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. And Kendra, of course, has been a part of the Free Assange Vigil series for a couple of months now. We are actually hoping and potentially discussing about a Free Assange Vigil co-host meetup in Colorado, because it's about a halfway point for all of us. I'm here in California, and they're in Ohio and Iowa, respectively. Which I guess the halfway point would be more like Salt Lake City, but fuck that.
Free place to stay in Colorado.
Yeah.